Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to the Basem Hanna Podcast. This podcast is for anybody looking to gain more knowledge on entrepreneurship and more specifically the Canadian real estate development space, which is where I operate. As always, your likes, comments, and shares are greatly appreciated. And if you want to watch more full-length episodes of the podcast, please head over to my website, basemhanna.com. That's BASEMHANNA.com. You can also connect with me on social. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. Handles are here. Hope you enjoy the podcast. I'll jump right into it today and talk about a subject that will live with you for pretty much your entire career and life, and that's failure, making mistakes, and the resiliency required to continue down your path and accomplish your goals. Maybe the best way for me to kick this off is to talk about my own personal experience. I'd love to say that everything I've done has been a smashing success, but that's just not the way that life works. I've been blessed to have achieved success, but it's not without the bumps in the road. And what I'm here to tell everybody is that the bumps in the road are almost the most important part of the process, right after the success that you achieve, obviously, because those bumps are what teach you the lessons you need to learn. And it's your responsibility to be resilient enough to absorb that bump, learn the lesson, and move on. So I want to talk about my own personal examples. The first time I ever realized that I made a mistake or that I wasn't going in the direction that I wanted to go in was when it was related to my schooling. In high school, I didn't pay that much attention. I cared more about my social life than I did about my studies. And what ended up happening was I didn't get accepted into the universities that I wanted to go to, and the ones that would potentially set me up for the really good jobs afterwards. I knew I wanted to do commerce and go into business, but that there's a spectrum of things that you can do in business, and I did not set myself up for success. I ended up going to a school, which I still think is a good school, but it wasn't the one I wanted to go to. And that forced me to look internally and to think, well, how can I get what I want out of this situation? There's no way I'm going to go back and repeat high school, although that is an option, and that is one that I considered. I ended up having to find a way I basically had to work my ass off in my first 2 years of university and get the world's best marks to allow me to transfer into the university that I wanted to go to. And because I didn't achieve that correctly the first time through high school, my experience in those first 2 years of university taught me that I knew how to study. I could get much higher grades than I ever thought I was than I ever thought I was capable of getting. And when I got to the new school, I appreciated that school more, and I appreciated the lessons that I'd learned, and it set me up to be a good student. That was my first real example of failure or a mistake that I made that I needed to correct. And the resilience required and the effort to not put myself down and to actually just apply myself harder to get what it is that I wanted out of it. And I was happy with that. So then I go to this great school and I get the job of all jobs coming out of that school. I get this management consulting position at BCG in the UK, which is kind of a very coveted position in a very coveted office. And I go there and I suck at the job. Like, I am not built for the management consulting world, and it broke me. I came out of that experience and I realized, I'm like, man, I went to this school and I did everything that I was supposed to do and I still didn't get it right. Like, I suck. I'm worthless. And then I took a few months off and I reflected and I was like, well, maybe consulting isn't for me. The world's most successful people aren't management consultants. They're entrepreneurs and business people and professionals and technical experts. Like, there's many different paths to success. So like, don't get so down on this thing and focus on the next one. And because I did bad in that job, I completely shifted my focus and I went into real estate. And my first job in real estate, I thrived in and I loved it. I loved what I was doing. I knew that this was the place I wanted to be. But for the mistakes that I'd made in my past and being able to overcome them and to recognize that your world doesn't end when you make mistakes or when you fail, it allowed me to continue to keep going. And when I got that job in real estate, I loved it and I got promoted and I was doing very well, but my aspirations were to own my own business. So I quit my job and I started my own real estate fund at the ripe age of 24. Needless to say, that one didn't go well as well, and I failed. The first time I started a fund, I failed because I didn't know everything that I was supposed to do to successfully complete an acquisition and run a fund and manage other people's money. But with that failure, again, I had to lick my wounds. I had to accept the fact that I did something wrong. And then I went back into it again. But this time I realized I needed more information. I needed more skills. So I got a job at a private equity firm that taught me the balance of the skills that I didn't learn at my first job. And I did that job for 2 or 3 years. Again, I loved it. I thrived. The people I worked with were amazing and they taught me so much. And that failure and that experience allowed me to then start Almega in 2011, which is what I do now. Almega was a culmination of my successes in the real estate world, but also the failures that I achieved, that I experienced along the way, and my response to them. Once I got into Almega, my failures didn't stop and my mistakes didn't stop. You're always making mistakes. You're always learning. I bought my first property. My first 2 properties that I bought were fantastic, but I realized that I didn't know everything I needed to know about property management. And the first couple of years of managing those properties was touch and go. But we were able to correct our mistakes and correct course and to keep the fund alive long enough for us to achieve profit and success, which then led us to buying properties 3, 4, and 5, which helped us build a reputation for our fund, build our investor base, which was amazing. And then property number 6 came along. And property number 6 was probably to this day my biggest corporate failure or corporate mistake. And it wasn't that it was all my fault, but I bought a property at the peak of the market, and as the market corrected, we were not able to make the money that we wanted to make, and I had to face my investors and let them know that we'd made a mistake and that we were going to lose money. And that experience is extremely humbling and another form of failure that I continue to learn, because up until that point, I'd never really lost any investor money. I'd only made the money and we'd only been successful together. But that didn't stop me. The thing that I learned through that experience was that even if you plan everything properly on paper, the world, life, macroeconomic events like COVID can take you down, and you need to plan defensively. Or what I do now is I plan defensively on all my future assets, and I monitor the surroundings around me much more carefully to ensure that even if I'm not making the mistake, I can detect the mistakes that are about to happen so that we can avoid all out failures and catastrophes in the future. After property 6 and licking my wounds from that, we were fortunate enough to go on to property 7 and 8, which were much bigger developments in a more lucrative part of the real estate market. And that's where we stand today. I'm sitting here talking to you about my successes and failures, knowing full well that I have to prepare myself for whatever my next mistake or failure is going to be. But if there's one message or one key takeaway that anybody listening to this should know, it's that everybody fails, and making mistakes is a part of the learning process. But the key is to get back up. You need to take the lesson that the failure or mistake is trying to teach you, and to apply it not just to the situation that you're in, but to the broader version of your life. And through that, you will grow and you will become successful. Trust in that process and be okay making those mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. No one is perfect. Definitely not myself. But through each one of those mistakes that I make, I get a little bit better. And as I get a little bit better, I get a lot more dangerous to the entrepreneurship community, because I now know things that I didn't know before, that I apply, that I add to my repertoire to make the next thing that I'm going to do more successful. And that's the message I want to deliver to you guys. It's okay to fail because it'll make you stronger. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, your likes, comments, and shares are greatly appreciated. If you want to watch this or other full-length episodes of the podcast, please head over to my website, basemhanna.com. That's BASEMHANNA.com. You can also connect with me on social. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. My handles are here. And until the next time, I'm sending you all very positive vibes.